talking today to Emeka Okafor, who is a British Nigerian living in New York, who sees himself as a venture capitalist for Africa. Emeka, you have been the organizer of Maker Faire in Africa with others. Tell me how that came about.
Yes, the idea around Maker Faire stemmed from conversations around the idea of what a number of us who founded Maker Faire thought was this disconnect between the idea of hardware, the making of hardware, the idea of a need for a greater interest in manufacturing, the fact that we didn't have, as much as we thought, a good enough appreciation of people who were inventors and innovators in the more physical sense. We felt that in our combined work and interests, ranging from blogging about these tinkerers, these fabricators, these inventors, and so on, that there was a mother lode of individuals across the continent that we felt, in our opinion, were not getting their due in terms of people, one, acknowledging that they existed, two, understanding their importance, three, they themselves having a sense of valuing what they're doing. We felt that it was important for a number of reasons. One was, if we look at societies that have developed, they've developed because they have a broad range of activities that create wealth, a broad range of activities that add value, a broad range of activities that lead to what some would call a culture of production. But for these people to firstly be embraced and also to be self-assured about what they're doing, there needs to be, at least we thought, there needed to be a greater sense or appreciation of what they were doing. And we were not looking at this from a standpoint of, well, we needed people to go out and be inventors or go out and start manufacturing, because in many cases it was already happening. But we felt that, unlike in a number of other areas, there wasn't this sort of coherent understanding of the need for production in a whole broad range of areas and levels.
So where have the Maker Faires taken place?
They've taken place in 4 countries. The first one was in Ghana, second one was in Kenya, and then we went to North Africa and had one in Cairo, and last year we had one in West Africa again, which was in Lagos, Nigeria. So
what has come out of these Maker Faires in terms of the type of inventions or things that are being constructed?
They run the gamut. You know, you have everything from, in Lagos, Nigeria last year, for example, a multiprocessor agricultural piece of equipment called the Farm King that could process yam tubers, cassava tubers on an industrial stage, right through to automated driving mechanisms that we had in places like Cairo that students had built. And in between, all sorts of things like alarm systems to what some consider toys, hydraulic toys. So it really runs the gamut.
Was there a big difference between the Cairo one in North Africa and the sub-Saharan ones?
Well, one of the differences I would say that we had in Cairo as opposed to maybe Kenya and Lagos was the preponderance of things that maybe were built by students as opposed to roadside or garage type tinkerers. That being said, I wouldn't see that as a clear difference, because we did face challenges in Cairo around the identification of the more garage type tinkerer that we would have liked to see. My guess is that wherever you go in Africa, North Africa, South, East, West, you generally have all types. The question might be one of numbers, and the fact that in some places these individuals, and when I say these individuals, I'm referring to the more garage type individuals, may not be as aware of the opportunity that Maker Faire might have presented, as opposed to saying they don't exist.
Whether you connect with them or not.
Yes.
Yeah. And what's the ambition for Maker Faire beyond a single event a year?
Well, that's something that we are examining very, very closely. Our thinking is that to foster community on a grand scale, you almost need to encourage where you can self-organizing behavior everywhere. And that could involve any number of measures, from partnering with groups, local groups, in schools, in maker spaces or hacker spaces, encouraging the creation of maker spaces and hacker spaces, speaking to people in the educational sector, thinking through how we can see the exploratory activity of making as a form of maybe introduction to vocational skills, having people understand that if they begin to process and tinker, they can also begin to add value to any range of products that in some ways could yield to income producing activities. And this very sort of bottom-up engagement we feel is critical if we're to have young people who are not so young and older, to see the opportunity that lies in front of them, even though they might not have known that it was there all this time. In many ways, what we're trying to do is have people tap their inner creativity. The difference between what we define as a maker and what some people might define as an inventor is that, to a large extent, many people have this ability to be creative. But for any number of reasons, they haven't tapped into it. For some people, it may be just a case of, well, I want to explore. For others, it's much more serious in the sense that I need to create an occupation for myself. And when we come to the continent of Africa, where the levels of unemployment are huge, we need to re-examine what we mean by education, what we mean by creating people who are curiosity-seeking almost innately. These are things that we feel a sort of community-based, grassroots fostered system of making will foster.
Yeah, they're not the kind of sexy activities though, are they? It's not a kind of build an app or technology-based.
Well, they could be sexy in their own way, because technology, I see, is not something that exists in a box. You know, if you're working with robotics, for example, you could just as much be working in the area of programming as you are if you were coding an application of sorts.
So do some of these innovations that you're talking about involve coding?
Yes, a number of them do. If you look at the hardware prototypes that are looking at control systems or environmental sensors, or in the case of the last Maker Faire, a young man who was building a robotic arm, there was a need for coding. In many ways, the idea of having hardware over here and software over there, and sort of having this divide between the two, is no longer the case. There's this sort of rapprochement of the two coming together, and even at Maker Faire, the Maker Fairs we've had in various countries in Africa, we're beginning to see that.